cold air is going to be moving into the country as we head into the week. We're going to get multiple waves with multiple storms, too, that are going to be moving through. And as each system moves through, we're going to tap into some of this cold air that it is across Canada. Across the south, it's going to be fairly warm here. Some of that cold air tries to go a little bit further south with the second storm. In fact, 2 ice storms on the way, I think, for some of the same areas over and over again. Pretty wild to see this set up. I don't know the last time I've seen something quite like this. So a very interesting forecast ahead. This cold air starts to go a little bit further to the south as we head into Monday and Tuesday, and that opens the door for snow a little bit further to the south than what we're seeing right now. Here's your official, it's not official. This is the official European deterministic run. Do not take this and say this is exactly how it's going to be, but look what it's doing next week. It's trying to put some lighter snow now back into the central plains and some heavier snow here into the mid-Atlantic. Let's see how all this shakes out. Still a long time before we get there. A lot of folks, I've seen the comments, they'll come in and say, oh my gosh, it all changed. I can't believe it. It's never right. I mean, come on, guys. That's over a week out. I don't believe it either. But what I am starting to believe in more is this ice potential, and that could be quite impactful for parts of the Northeast, also into the Mid-Atlantic, and even across parts of the Midwest. Look at this extending east. So we head into Thursday, now into Friday. That starts to push into the Northeast and some heavier snow back across the Great Lakes. That's storm number 1. We're going to zoom in a little bit closer and really break it down. Another storm moving into the west as we head into Friday. Some big snow still going here across Oregon, Idaho, Montana. That pushes off to the east. Out ahead of this, we tap into some moisture and some showers start to break out again across Missouri, over into Illinois, Kentucky. And on the northern side of that, there could be some ice again for the same areas. Iowa, over to Illinois, northern Indiana, up into parts of Michigan. And then the further north you go, the more snow you see out of this. And how about that? More significant freezing rain, I think, for Pennsylvania, over to parts of New York, into southern New England. This one looks a little bit stronger as we head into Saturday and Sunday, so this could have some heavier precipitation with it. Behind it, another shot of cold air. Now we've pushed the cold air a little bit further to the south. This is where it gets a little bit interesting for next week. This would be storm number 3. Count them. And there may be more after this. Time will tell. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Let's get through these first 2 storms before we nail down the specifics of how much snow we'll see and where we'll see it. But this is the idea heading into next Tuesday with something forming here. It doesn't look really well organized, but it doesn't take much ice to cause huge problems. And this looks like a snowy event on the northern side. Wherever you end up, there could be several inches out of that. That puts all snow into New York and New Jersey. Still a lot of time before we get there. And then another storm on the way heading into next Thursday and Friday. Someone asked me, what defines a storm? I guess really, let's just say a piece of energy that moves through. This isn't a very well-defined, strong winter storm. I don't see that. Not a strong mid-latitude cyclone, but could bring some wintry precipitation. And even now, the storm that we're seeing, the move east, isn't really strong. We've got ice storm warnings in effect. Again, it could be very disruptive. And then behind this, another potential winter event heading into the following week. We're really far out. I want to take the GFS out in time just to compare their storm 1, their storm 2. Here's the question, and this is where things get different on the GFS. It's trying to do this weird thing here into the mid-Atlantic, stalling your front out, developing low pressure here somewhere, overriding that with some snow, sleet, freezing rain. Look at that, how far south it does, and then it does this weird thing. The GFS is notorious for these types of things where it puts snow over top of your baroclinic zone, wherever your dividing line of warm and cold air is, and it's trying to put some heavy snow into Virginia and, dare I say, North Carolina and southeast Virginia. I don't believe this just yet. I am not a buyer, so let's wait and see. The jury's still out. Still too much spread, I think, in the model range guidance for next week. This is looking pretty solid now, though, over the next 24 to 48 hours as our precipitation breaks out, especially Wednesday night across northern parts of Indiana. We're going to have the ice back here into Iowa, too, into Wisconsin, and then that moves east into Ohio, Pennsylvania. This is where the ice really gets heavy, and then that pushes into the northeast. South of that, just rain, way too warm for any wintry precipitation, and it pushes into the northeast as we head now into Thursday. Behind it, some drier conditions, now moving into the Midwest. High pressure builds in. We dry out from Kentucky, northwest of that, all the way into the upper Midwest, and then some showers develop across the south as we head into Friday. This would be the second system starting to take shape, and you can already start to see the impacts heading into Saturday morning with some light freezing rain, sleet, maybe even some snow mixing in on the northern side of this from Iowa, streaking all the way down into Virginia and West Virginia As that warm air surges north out ahead of this area of low pressure, we'll start to see a transition over to just rain. The further north you go, the colder the air, it will likely stay snow, I think, north of this line here from the Illinois-Wisconsin border over into Michigan, probably north of Detroit, and then up into the lower peninsula of Michigan, the northern part of that area. And then east of that, as the low moves to the east, we're still bringing some warm air north out ahead of it over top of that cold air at the surface. So with that overrunning, you get your mixed precipitation again into Pennsylvania. It doesn't look like it's heavy this time as far south into Virginia, the Shenandoah Valley, into the Panhandle of West Virginia, western Maryland. It looks like it's a little bit further to the north. For New York City, starting as snow, sleet, freezing rain, and then eventually it changes over to rain as our surface low develops right along the coast and moves off the coast, as it does some heavy snow possible into places like down east Maine, into the northern mountains of New England. Let's go into next week. Another storm possible. This is the European. It's been pretty bullish on something happening again into the mid-Atlantic, trying to put some heavy precipitation somewhere between Philadelphia and D.C. I get it. You've seen multiple chances for snow, and sometimes it just doesn't come to pass, but pretty wild to see another storm. And then behind that, maybe another one. And then maybe another one. And maybe another one. Just like, what in the world is going on? So you've got this huge blocking pattern. Someone was mentioning that in the chat, and that's absolutely right. So as you head into now around the 12th and the 13th, this is incredible. Huge ridge building up across the North Pole from Europe, also up into Alaska. And these two meet up. And now you've just blocked everything up here, and you've pushed all your cold air south into North America. That's why. Until that changes, I don't know. I think this winter storm pattern is on. Watch it. You may not be in the snow path now, but that could change. There's your snow totals. Look, you've got one round of snow, by the way, through Friday. On top of that, another round through Sunday. Very impressive looking. Also into the northeast, this would be your snow through Friday with more on the way. You could try to put a glacier down, so to speak, here across northern New England. And look what happens the following week. I mean, come on. I don't know, but boy, that starts to look impressive heading into next week. The ice is a concern in the short term, though. We've talked about that here across Pennsylvania, down into Virginia, West Virginia, where there are multiple winter storm warnings. Also, these ice storm warnings in effect for the mountains here into Pennsylvania, down into West Virginia, western Maryland, and up along 81. That ice could get pretty heavy, too. Also, somewhere into Pennsylvania, I think the I-80 corridor, pretty slick, too. And then up into the northeast as that precipitation moves north and east, the ice moves with it. All right, let's go just a little bit further to the west now. We'll talk about what's going on. We'll look at the future radar. You can see some of that ice also starting to fall across parts of Oklahoma and Missouri as we head into the early morning hours on Wednesday as precipitation tries to override some of that cold air. So there could be some tricky travel early in the day, and then we change over to just some showers, and the precipitation moves off to the east. This is some really light ice and precipitation across Illinois, also parts of Indiana, and then further to the east, it starts to get a little bit heavier on the NAM model. You can see that. I think it's doing a pretty good job. The global models have a hard time, I think, picking up on the precipitation, but you can see that heavier precip across northern Ohio with snow up across Michigan, also across Wisconsin, and now you're dealing with the heavier ice here, sleet also, and some snow into New York City as we head into early Thursday morning, changing quickly over to mostly a sleet mix for New York and northern New Jersey. Now you've got the freezing rain here in the valleys of Pennsylvania, warmer air aloft, changing things to rain across West Virginia, and there's that mixed precipitation across the northeast, staying all snow well north of Albany into Vermont and New Hampshire. And look at the snow falling in Ontario. Just wild to see that all the way over. Just wild, pretty much across all of southeast Canada with this setup. Further to the west, this is a look at that system, a little bit of a different view here on the European. And once it's gone, now we're looking at the next one that's going to form here. Heavier snow, likely across the upper Midwest over to the Great Lakes. Some ice again possible in those same areas. And then beyond that, those of you across the Central Plains are hoping for some snow. Maybe you are. This might be your chance. It doesn't look super strong. It hasn't looked strong until you get a deeply amplified trough swinging through, which this pattern doesn't really want to support that. It just doesn't look like a big snow here. Keep an eye on it, though. And then another storm could bring some snow in heading into the middle part of next week, and it just stays active. across the west. Big snows across the mountains here in the Cascades, into Idaho, into Montana. Some of that backs off as we head into Thursday, at least in the interior areas, but another low moves close to the coast. That's going to put some big snow again into Northern California, some heavy rain possible with this too, and that moisture pushes pretty much across the same areas. Maybe cold enough for mostly snow down into Boise this time, and then that pushes east into Wyoming, into the Dakotas. Pretty wild to see all of this, and then if you look at the snow across the west, feet of snow falling here. All right, a lot to talk about, a lot going on. Thanks for watching the video today, guys. I'll have another update for you coming up tomorrow. So if you're brand new, hope you'll subscribe and come back. See you next time.